Godzilla has come to destroy Tokyo, but who's coming to destroy Deadpool 3? Well, we're going to talk about that, Doctor Who, and a lot more on today's episode of the Geek Watch podcast.
This is the Geek Watch podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 206 of the Geek Watch podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
We have some Doctor Who to talk about, episode 2 of the 3 series. And we had some experience at the movies, but I did want to start out today talking about this big, messed up, spoilery, crazed internet that we live on. As you know, I tend to avoid spoilers as much as possible. That's one of the reasons why I don't look at a lot of trailers. But the things that have been going on with Deadpool 3, a lot of the leaks that have been coming out, a lot of surprises that were planned that have been spoiled now. There are people in the movie they wanted to surprise us with.
Right.
People with their big, long telephoto lenses were taking pictures of things. Now, because I have a standard operating procedure of avoiding spoilers and not clicking on links, I have, up to this point, fortunately, not been spoiled on anything yet. Anytime I see something that looks like it's even
Hinted at a spoiler?
Yes, I haven't clicked anything. Any real news that was Deadpool 3, I'm like, look, I'm going to see it. I don't need to know anything else. The only thing I could possibly need to know is if something happens and it gets delayed or something like that, I would need to know that. Besides that, I know everything that I need to know about the movie. And I get wanting to get all the details, but unfortunately, there were a lot of great surprises that a lot of people have been spoiled on now, which is a shame. And I think a lot of that has to do with because we had the strike for so long and there hasn't been a lot of news. Because the only thing there's been to report, as you and I both know painfully well, has been the strike. And so now that things have been moving and we are now getting to a place where some movies are finally getting back into production and some things like Beetlejuice 2, they've just finished production. Right. News outlets are scrambling for every little piece of news that they can get. And unfortunately...
Like paparazzi.
Yeah. And unfortunately... for Deadpool 3, where they had some little surprises. They wanted to have some thrills for the audience. I didn't know they were going to do that. That's going to be cool. Yeah. They wrecked all of it. Unfortunately, we found ourselves in that situation. As of right now, I've managed to dodge a lot of that. I think you've also been fortunate enough that you haven't caught a lot of that mess either.
No, I only really saw the yellow costume.
Yeah.
That was about all I know about.
Yeah. I feel so bad for everybody out there who wanted to go into this movie not knowing everything about it and being pleasantly surprised, and they're not going to get that opportunity now. And it's a terrible shame, but we're getting to this point now where spoilers and protecting your property, whether it's movies or television, and trying to keep things under wrap. And the reason why you do that is, I think in a real sense, even among the fans, I don't believe that they fully understand why you want to do some of those things. And something that really ties into that, of course, is the second episode of the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. So yes, it's What the Who.
What the Who?
So one thing that we talked about, of course, was how this episode, and we are going to get into spoilers probably from here on out. Let's just say this. We're going to talk about Doctor Who, then we're going to talk about Godzilla Minus One. And so if you haven't seen either one of those, maybe this is the place where you pause. We'll say 5 minutes in, go ahead and pause. Okay. And come back because you don't want any of the spoilers that we got coming. You want to see these things first. That's what we say right now. If you haven't seen Doctor Who, either of the 60th anniversary episodes yet, if you've not seen the new Godzilla, put us on pause. We'll be here when you get back, but definitely go out and check those out. That'll be our quick review. So Of course, when we were talking about Doctor Who in this episode, one of the things we talked about was there was no spoilers. The trailer told you next to nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
And because of that, there were all these speculations. And we didn't really talk about a lot of the speculations going on because, again, there were some things that I heard, some things that I made absolutely sure that I didn't listen to. But at the same time, I felt like if maybe something had been spoiled for me, I didn't want to turn around and spoil it for somebody else. And there were all these speculations about how this was going to be a multi-doctor episode. Everybody was trying to speculate, what's the big secret that's going to...
Well, it was a multi-doctor episode.
Yeah, in a manner of speaking, but we didn't have other actors.
No other actors.
Yeah, this wasn't that kind of a thing. And people were confused by that. They're like, why are you keeping such a big secret if there wasn't some big blockbuster explosive moment that was going to happen? Although I would say that if you're a fan of the show and have been a fan for a long time, I think it ended pretty spectacularly.
Oh, yes.
With a wonderful surprise, which we will talk about. But everyone thought there was some big secret they were protecting, to the point where Russell T. Davies had to make a public apology saying, look, we're sorry that you got an idea.
You built it up in your head.
And he explained basically the reason they kept it all secret was, if you know what's going to happen, this is not going to be a fun episode. The fun of the episode is going into it having absolutely no idea what's going on. And that was what they didn't want to get spoiled. And it makes perfect sense. But again, the fans built it up into something. But at the same time, we got to talk about this episode because, wow.
Right? It is so classic science fiction. There's so much Twilight Zone. There's so much Alien. There's Event Horizon. There's Star Trek in it. It was such a good sci-fi Doctor Who episode, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And I've heard some people say it didn't seem like it had the mavitas of a 60th anniversary. Yeah, I had to do that. Sorry. But
that was great.
Yeah, had to do that. But they said it didn't really have the big thrill that you expect from his 60th anniversary. And my answer is this. I think that these 3 episodes are doing more than just celebrating the 6th anniversary. It really is, especially because of the fact that this is on Disney Plus for the first time. These 3 episodes, really what they're trying to do is give people an idea who've never really seen Doctor Who before or have heard about it, and now because it's on Disney Plus, they're diving into it. They're wanting to give these people an idea of what the show's like and what you can do with it.
It's a return to form with a bigger budget, is what it is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is what you need to expect from Doctor Who. Going back 60 years, this is what the show is like. This is what it's about. This is Monster of the Week, and we love it. We Whovians love this stuff.
And to go back to saying a Doctor Who episode that maybe this reminds me of, and we go back to Tennant, the 10th Doctor. You remember the episode with, it was basically what they called a bottle episode. And this is what this is, because when you think about it, really you only have 2 actors.
Right, in one location.
And one location. And so it is, in a real sense, a bottle episode.
Which usually happens when you run out of budget.
Yeah.
So they'll do a clip episode or a bottle episode where we stay in one room and we only have one story. And what Community was really good about that. And they would say, I guess we're doing a bottle episode. And so, yeah, a bottle episode with a huge budget.
Yeah. But then again, some of the bottle episodes for Doctor Who have been some of the best episodes they've done. Blink, where the Doctor and the companion at the time, Martha, barely appears in the whole episode.
That's to me, Blink is the epitome of time travel when it comes to Doctor Who. If you want to understand time travel, you look at Blink. It's a short film. It's a short film on time travel that so many time travel films could take a lesson from. It is a beautiful piece of art.
Oh, absolutely. And what you can do with that concept. Now,
I was thinking of the one where the Doctor and Donna went to a spa planet and he got on.
I was about to talk about that. Midnight.
Midnight.
Yeah, yes, that was.
They were just in a train car with a bunch of different people, and
you never really know who the monster is.
Right.
You never really get to see the monster. There's no big reveal. And yeah, I do have to say that this episode, Wild Blue Yonder, reminded me of Midnight. Not just because it was a bottle episode, but it had that unease of you not really knowing what's going on. And again, I think that's the main reason why you had to be careful about spoilers. You didn't want to spoil anything. because you get this wonderful moment of the Doctor and Donna talking, about Donna's worried about what happens if the TARDISes come back and she never goes home. What is that going to do to her family? And then you cut to the Doctor doing what he's doing, and you realize, wait a minute,
Right.
I thought he was, and you slowly start to get the idea that
And we're in two different conversations.
and
Yes.
we didn't realize that. Yeah, you start to, and
We
it's-
realize it when they realize it.
yeah, there was that moment. Is that just bad editing? What's going on? And then suddenly you realize, oh, this is getting weird.
It's a little Kubricky.
Yeah, there's that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some really interesting things that happened in this episode we definitely have to talk about.
Yeah.
One of them is the Doctor came out. So, which there were people got upset about that.
Gosh.
A certain kind of person got a little bit upset about that, which I didn't have any problem with. I would say the one thing let me ask you before I get into that, because this is
Okay.
going to be a long thing. For you, what was it? Was there anything in the episode that really stuck out for you that you were like, oh, I love this. This is what I look for in Doctor Who?
The ending, the twist when they get back, brought tears to my eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if we're ready to go there yet, but
We can definitely
yeah,
go there.
it was Wilf.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Wilfred Mott.
there he was, and it just my heart.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, "Doctor, you have the world's ending, and you have to save us." It just hit me right in the feels. Hit me right in the feels.
And it was so wonderful to get to see him again. And of course, we got the Bernard Cribbins credit at the end. The original plan, of course, was that he was going to appear in the Giggle, and he was at the table read for it. But then he wound up passing away, and they had to rewrite around that part. But we did still get that one moment, which was not only his last appearance on Doctor Who, but that was his last role.
Yeah, it felt like watching Chadwick Boseman in What If, knowing that was the last and getting that final bit that we're always going to love and we're always going to remember.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Now, you might find this interesting.
Okay.
Do you know what his first appearance in Doctor Who was?
Nope.
It's not
Is it a classic Who?
It is, but it isn't.
The movie?
Yes, the old movie. Yes,
Not
with-
1996?
No, because there were 2 Doctor Who movies before that.
What? Wait, the three doctors?
No, before that.
What?
Okay, this is a deep cut.
Must be.
But when Doctor Who started to become popular, in Great Britain, they decided to make a couple of movies based off of the Daleks. When Hartnell, the first Doctor,
Yeah.
when the crew first meets the Daleks and then the Dalek Invasion of Earth, both of these William Hartnell episodes, right? They decided to make movie versions of these.
Wow.
Now, first of all, they wouldn't be considered canon because the Doctor is human. In the movies, he's a human who invents the TARDIS
Really?
and was played by Peter Cushing.
Vampire Hunter.
Yeah.
Dude, wow.
So he played the Doctor, and Bernard Cribbins played the role of a police officer who manages to get into the TARDIS and gets carried away. So he
Because it's a police box, of course.
Exactly.
That is fantastic.
and so
Are these available anywhere?
oh, I'm sure that they are.
Okay.
I'm certain they're on BritBox, and but they're definitely there, and I've seen them. Like I said, they're non-canonical because he's referred to in the movies as Doctor Who. They call him Doctor Who. His granddaughter travels with him, and the inside of the TARDIS is bigger on the inside, but it doesn't look like the TARDIS from that time period or any TARDIS that you're used to.
Okay. So it's like in the 1990s when they were making movies from old TV shows like The Addams Family and
Right.
the Beverly Hillbillies and the like. So
Yeah,
That's
these were
cool.
very, like I said, these were very old movies, and they were made during, like I said, the first Doctor's time, and that's why they had who they called Doctor Who. They made him an older grandfatherly character, very similar, but you did wind up having the Daleks, and it's not canonical with the Whoniverse timeline. We'll just say this is like an alternate reality Doctor
Right.
Who.
adjacent.
Yeah. And so that was Bernard Cribbins' first venture into Doctor Who, the alternate 2-movie Doctor Who.
Okay.
But yeah, it was wonderful to see him again. And it is sad knowing that was it and that there was more planned for him that we're not going to get. This is the last time we're going to get to see him. I was hoping that they might have been able to film a little bit more, but of course, Russell T. Davies has already mentioned that we got what we got. He was at the table read, and We had a lot of things planned, obviously to the level that he would be capable of doing it.
Right. Yeah.
But he passed on before filming could start, and so they didn't have anything filmed, unfortunately, and they had to shape a few things around. Obviously, they're going to have to explain why he's not there, and there'll be a punch in the heart a little bit, but there was a lot of stuff that went on in that show. I loved a lot of what happened with the interactions with the character. And when you realize that both, you have your two main actors who are basically playing two roles, and again, both of them knocked it right out of the park.
The Catherine Tate show, she does characters
All the time,
better than most. She may be the best.
I think it was a few years ago when she did a version of A Christmas Carol where she played her old
Nan.
with Nan, and David Tennant came in as the Ghost of Christmas Present.
Looking like Russell Brand, yes.
Yeah, he did. And it was hilarious.
I love Nan and Lauren Cooper and all of them. And
there was an episode of a bit they did for Children in Need where she was playing Lauren and David Tennant was the substitute teacher.
Yes, and she recites all that Shakespeare.
Because that was the one thing with Lauren. She
hides how smart she is. And yes.
She's a straight up chav.
Yes.
And so, you underestimate her, and then there's this moment where she
blows everyone away.
She goes off. She doesn't have to be like this. She just does.
Oh, and did you see her with Tony Blair? That was great too.
Oh yeah.
Is he a prime minister? Is he a prime minister? And then she does great in The Office. I stand Catherine Tate.
Oh yeah. But David Tennant, Catherine Tate, there they are basically playing two different characters. And even though dressed the same and everything else, was amazing. And again, nothing new if you've seen them act before or if you've seen them do. I've seen a telecast of a Shakespeare play they did together, Much Ado About Nothing.
Yes. I've seen scenes from it, but I haven't watched it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. An amazing production.
Okay.
But
which is hard to do because that's not the most interesting Shakespeare show. I'm not going to say it's boring out loud.
It depends on who does it and how you do it. They made it really interesting, and they had this great revolving stage that was awesome.
Wow.
And I have to say that the Kenneth Branagh movie that was done on Much Ado, I really did enjoy. I think this is one of those situations where the actors have to step in and help.
Right.
But yeah, I was absolutely amazed by, once again, just how well they were able to pull this off when basically they had to carry the entire weight of the show as the protagonist and the antagonist. But there's one scene I definitely have to talk about. And again, it's this wonderful moment when you're not sure who's who, when they basically team them off and you're not sure who's the real ones and who are the fake ones. And of course, Catherine Tate and why of all of the David Tennant era Doctor Who companions, and maybe even I would say the companions completely, she's one of the best.
Yes.
She's intelligent, but a different kind of intelligent, but she's no dummy. And she's always been that character. And the fact that she's able to suss out that the doctor isn't who she thinks he is, he's the fake doctor because of the tie. She deliberately distracts him so that he forgets to keep the tie manifested, and was really clever. But I have to talk about the other side of that conversation when the doctor is talking to the fake Donna. And they talk about something that a lot of us thought they weren't ever going to even bother to bring up again, which was the Flux and the Timeless Child. And a lot of people were like, they're never going to talk about this. They're going to let it go away. But not only did they bring it up, not only they referenced it, but they certainly said it as canon.
Yep, because and they're making it a big plot point coming up. Like maybe that's going to be his Shudigatwa's motivation.
Now, I am going to say this because I was very much in that camp of they're probably never going to bring this up again. They're probably not going to say anything. But now that they have, the writer part of me is saying, well, of course, Russell T. Davies is going to talk about this because as the story goes, it's his job to fix it. And if he's as good of a writer as everybody keeps saying that he is, including you and me, he is going to be able to fix it. And in that scene, he did fix it because one of the biggest problems with both the issue of the Flux And the fact that half the entirety of creation was completely destroyed. And again, the whole idea of the timeless child, there were issues with both of those. But the main issue that I've had, and a lot of people have had, is that it didn't matter in the end. It's like we just went on as like none of that mattered. And in that scene, in just one scene, in a few moments, you saw the Doctor cared about all of that stuff. It was a big deal. The Doctor wasn't the same by going through all of that. It had an effect. It wasn't something you could just ignore. And that did more for that storyline than anything that was written in the script about it. And I have to say, well played, Russell, well played.
Yep.
And some people were upset because they felt, look, we need to let this thing die. Why bring it back up again? But if Russell T. Davies is the writer that everyone says that he is, not only is he going to be able to bring it up, but he's going to be able to do something to make this mean something and fix it.
Yep.
And I get the feeling that he at least feels to some degree that is his job to do. And so now I'm interested in this because when you think about it, as a creative person, I could come up with some ideas about how you would fix this, but I'm interested to see what he's going to do with it because like a lot of creatives who do something really well, they're very much in love with it. Russell T. Davies was really good writing for Doctor Who and show running for Doctor Who because he loves Doctor Who. The whole mythology of Doctor Who's been part of it, has followed it as a fan since the beginning, has been able to introduce new stuff into it. I mean, let's face it, he got a hot potato thrown in his lap because of a lot of the stuff that, developed in the
Jodie Baden Yogi.
Yeah, the Jodie Whittaker era, which I hate to even call it that because it sounds like that was all her fault. And I will keep saying this over and over again. That wasn't her fault. And I know it sounds like I come down on Chris Chibnall a lot, and that's because I do. At the same time, I don't think he's a horrible, terrible person and he should die in a car fire. I just feel like there were certain things that he did during his tenure in the show that maybe if he thought about it a little bit, and maybe there's something in him right now that's thinking, if I could go back and redo, maybe there's certain things that he wouldn't do again. Now that I know that Russell T. Davies is looking, basically take what's been given to him and make something out of it. That has me interested. I am curious to know how he's going to take these missteps, we'll just call them missteps, and make something really meaningful out of them. And the first thing that he did with them was he made them important. They have consequences. I think if I was bothered by anything in Flux or The Timeless Children, was after this big revelation, it didn't ultimately mean anything. You just went on as if it never happened. And for me, that's the cardinal sin of storytelling. If you tell a story where, especially a traditional story, where your main characters, they go through something, they shouldn't be the same people at the end that they were at the beginning.
Right, yeah, a story arc.
Yeah, there needs to be some sort of arc. Obviously, you can play it where... And there are some, I would say in some situations, I can see where, like in Old Who, the Doctor didn't have character arcs because it was like James Bond or Sherlock Holmes. You were showing that this was a moral character and the
epistolary,
that you're showing that this is a character that's steadfast and you want to show them as steadfast. And once we got into New Who and the Doctor started to have a character arc because of the Time War, and you were starting to see the Doctor more as a
they should have flaws. They should have...
Yeah.
Yep.
So you do wind up in New Who changing the direction of the Doctor. And so the Doctor does make mistakes and the Doctor does have an arc. But then that means that things that happen to the Doctor and things that the Doctor are responsible for and the Doctor's actions are going to have consequences for the Doctor and for everyone else. And if you're going to go down that road, then when things happen, they happen for a reason, and things can't just be the same. For me, that was the cardinal sin out of both Flux and The Timeless Children, was that you made a major change. You changed the entire backstory of the Doctor and the Time Lords in one episode. And in another series, you wind up with basically destroying half of all creation. And then after that, it's almost like it never happened. And that bothered the heck out of me. And at least in that one scene, you could see that both of these things had an effect. There were consequences involved. And that, now where he goes with it, I'm not sure what we're going to see, but at least it's going to go somewhere. So
We'll get to see.
and we will definitely get to see that. But we get one more episode, and then we get the Christmas episode. And then after that, who knows?
Who knows?
But
What the who?
what the who? But we will definitely, next week, we're going to talk about the giggle and
The toy maker.
and the toy maker. But before we go to Godzilla, there is one thing, though, about these specials that does have me a little bit worried, because something's happened in these last two episodes is that we got a Donna's Gonna Die scare in both of these episodes. We got them twice. Is it 3 strikes and she's out?
Oh.
Have they been baiting us and like tricking us into thinking she's going to die and then pulling that they're going to
She's going
metaphorically
to
they're going to metaphorically pull the trigger?
pull the rug out from under us.
I'm wondering. I really am wondering. What are we going to see this next episode? But we will definitely find out on Saturday.
Find out.
But let's talk about Godzilla Minus One. We saw that this last Tuesday.
Yeah.
And again, we're going into spoilers. So if you haven't seen it,
Go see it. Not
definitely-
even because of the spoilers. You just need to see this movie.
Yeah, this is definitely one to see in theater. The biggest thing I'll just start out by saying this right now is that to me, it's a typical Godzilla movie, but then it's not.
No. Like, and I had only seen, before I saw this, I had only seen one Godzilla movie, and it was one of the recent ones. It was Godzilla King of the Monsters. I hadn't seen any of the old ones. I hadn't seen the Matthew Broderick one. I remember the cartoon a little bit, but I never really watched it. So everything I knew about Godzilla was like jokes and memes. I've seen like 5 Gamera movies, but I haven't seen Godzilla. And everything that I thought about Godzilla, or that had been in my mind about Godzilla, this was truly such a good story. It wasn't a big monster movie like from the 50s or the 60s. It wasn't I Was a Teenage Werewolf. It wasn't The Blob. It created these, I don't even think nuanced is the right word, but every character, there's not one wasted character. You know everything about them. You know their backstories. You know what they've been through. And you love every single one of them. Even if there wasn't a giant fire-breathing lizard, you would still care about these characters. We could take Godzilla out of this, and it's still a beautiful post-war Japanese culture movie.
Yeah.
Very significant.
Yeah, it's very much a drama. And as someone who has seen a bunch of Godzilla movies, in fact, I've seen when I was very young, before you were born, this is how long ago this was, but I saw Godzilla versus Megalon on the big screen back when movie theaters only had 1 or 2 screens. But I saw Godzilla versus Megalon. That was my first Godzilla movie that I'd ever seen, and it was in a theater because Toho was trying to promote in the United States, and they wanted to open up the American market. So we got a Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
And I loved it. But, you know,
Was it dubbed?
Yeah, it was a dubbed
Oh,
because
well, yeah.
they knew their audience.
Right.
But I'd never seen a kaiju movie before, never knew anything about it. And it looked cool and it was really neat and I enjoyed it. And of course, I've seen bunches of Godzilla movies. But for the most part, regardless if it's the Japanese Toho films or some of the American versions that have come out, you have human characters, but you don't really care about them that much. You're there to see the monsters fight.
Yeah.
And that's what you're looking forward to. It's like big monster fight.
Big monsters, guys in suits stomping on models, and
Exactly.
like the Power Rangers. We want to
exactly.
see the giant. Yes.
And so even when Godzilla's the villain, you're still kind of rooting for him to tear stuff out.
Exactly like those monster movies of the 50s. We want to see the giant grasshoppers eat everyone. We want to see the giant spiders.
But that's what's strange about this movie. We're not rooting for Godzilla in this film. We're not at all.
But I still want to see everything.
Yeah.
I want to see his radiation blast. I want to see him jump up out of the water and bite into ships. It's still really cool.
Yeah, and we get all of that.
Get it, yes.
But you're not rooting for Godzilla to destroy Tokyo.
No.
You're rooting for the humans, which is weird. But let's go back to that, what they called the heat ray, his atomic blast, because This is, I would have to say, and even in the modern Godzilla movies that we've seen, this has been the most devastating use of that weapon I've ever seen, because when he fires it off, first of all, you have that moment where you see the beginning glow of the radiation. The Geiger counters are kicking up crazy, and his back plates start popping out. And you can tell it hurts him to even summon this thing. There's like real pain when he does this. So he's angry. Because that's one thing you find out about Godzilla in this movie. He is an animal, and he is very aggressive, even before he absorbs radiation and becomes much larger and has this weapon. But he summons up the energy, the back plates start glowing blue and popping out. He breathes in, you see the radiation glow, and then he fires off this blue flame of radiation that even stuff that it's going past, the heat off of this thing is just smashing buildings. Stuff it's not even hitting. It's just as it's passing through, you see that just being near this beam is destructive. And then when it hits its target, it's like a literal mushroom cloud develops. It's like it's an atomic bomb in a breath with a shock wave and the radiation.
And it being set directly after World War II and what Tokyo has been through, what they have seen, the bombs that have been going off. They have no problem believing this.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, a giant lizard comes from the sea and blows things up. It's just another problem for us to deal with.
Right. It was really brilliant to set it at that time because you get so much mileage out of that setting and that time period. Because you got a main character who's suffering from PTSD and survivor's guilt. You have a nation that has been devastated, so they've got like next to nothing. They have just lost a war where they had to sign a treaty and it's this way to this day, that they're no longer allowed to have a standing army. They can only have a national guard. And so the vast majority of their war weapons that haven't been destroyed during the war are having to be turned over to the UN as part of the treaty. So they don't have a lot of weapons to fight.
Begging for help.
And they're begging for help in a situation where the Cold War is going on. And
everyone else has better things to deal with than us having this giant lizard.
Because the thing about it is, at this point, the United States isn't the only one who has a bomb. By the time
Red Scare.
we had the Red Scare, and the United States didn't want to get involved in Japan's situation with Godzilla, because if they start becoming more military that close to Russia, they're going to consider that as hostility. The world could fall back into war again.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant storytelling.
There was so much mileage you got just out of the fact that this is like post-war Japan.
This is the most Oscar bait monster movie I've ever known.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It certainly feels like it is. Sometimes when people think about Oscar bait, you get this idea of they were doing stuff in a certain way because they're going for the Oscar, which obviously Toho wasn't.
Period dramas, historicals, biopics, those are all Oscar bait in my head.
Yeah. The thing about it, I would say, is I never would have thought that Godzilla Minus One would be in the running to be like the best movie I've seen this year. I will say this, as far as movies for 2023, I think although it's not going to make the money that Barbie made. And let me say this too. As great a movie as this was and how awesome the special effects was, all the special effects for this movie. And again, that we keep talking about this radiation blast. And of course, once Godzilla fires it, you can see that he's even singed by it. And he's able to heal, which makes him hard to kill, but also allows him to fire a weapon that would kill him. But there's all these wonderful effects, and there's all the great period costumes and and there's definitely CGI there, but there's some really interesting dramatic effects. And this is the one thing that's really going to stick in the craw of Hollywood and studios, is the fact that with everything that we got from this movie, and we got awesome monster action, but we also got human drama, and we had characters that we cared about, and people were really fascinated by this movie, and it's doing really well. They were able to do all of this on a budget of how much?
No. What?
In American money, $15 million.
No.
That's it. Their production budget was
what?
$15 million. That's it.
Because all the was like the destroyed city. Was that all CGI? How did they, man? Because it was gorgeous. It's awful to say the destroyed city was gorgeous in the context of being a set piece and telling that story, and that this is absolute decimation everyone lives in now. You put two boards together to make your shelter.
Yeah.
Man, I'm floored at that.
15 million. That was their entire production budget. And that's what they got out of it. And this is in the running. Like I said, it's probably not going to make Barbie money. But honestly, when you have a movie that has that low of a budget, again, when we're in situations where Hollywood doesn't feel comfortable.
High risk, high reward.
Yeah. But when you look at the screen and you see what you can get out of 15 million, and again, going back to Everything Everywhere All at Once, and how it was a beautiful film that made good money, that didn't have a huge budget, that had all these wonderful special effects that were created by people who learned how to use software that you and I have access to, and learned from YouTube videos how to do these effects and made it work. And A24 just absolutely knocked it out of the park. And now we've got this wonderful Godzilla movie that I feel like should be added now. We make this a trilogy instead of Barbieheimer. We should have, even if you cut,
Heimerzilla.
yeah, because think about
Oppenzilla, I think Oppenzilla.
Yeah, Oppenzilla. Think about Oppenzilla.
They're very similar, yes.
Yeah, think about that. You watch Oppenheimer and follow it with Godzilla, and it would be totally, it wouldn't even feel like they're different movies, because the way that Godzilla was shot, there's such a verisimilitude to it. Yeah, giant radioactive fire-breathing lizard
I saw
aside.
I saw a meme that said Who Framed Roger Rabbit and I, Robot were twin movies, and I'm still reeling from that. Same plot, and I'm still reeling from it.
Oh yeah. But yeah, that was what was so wonderful about, to me, what was wonderful about Godzilla Minus One, because it's not just a good Godzilla movie, it's a good movie,
and
period.
All by itself. If you take the lizard out, it's great. If you take the humans out, it's great.
Yeah. But you get both of them together. And like I said, especially the main character, there's so many times where you're just and that little girl. Oh, the little
Akiko. Yes.
Akiko, yeah. It's me.
And all the other people fighting for Akiko, like his co-workers on the boat, just like everything that we know about them and their stories, we still know about it. We know what they've been through. And that's what I mean when I say not a character is wasted. And when they go into that meeting to discuss how are we amateurs, everyday people, they're basically having a town hall meeting about how they're going to fight Godzilla. And every person in that room is someone individual, and you could see it on their faces, what they feel and what they want and how excited they are and how they want something for the future.
Right. And there are people that bail, and makes sense, because you're not going to be able to talk everybody into this, obviously. But yeah, they're basically a ragtag group of people that have access to some Navy weaponry that the UN was nice enough to allow them to keep so they could deal with this issue.
Yes.
But
it's so basic. It's life rafts. What do we don't have bombs, but we have life rafts.
Yeah. So the character arc for the main character is so incredible. Because again, the PTSD, the survivor's guilt, and the idea
and
that
the cultural pressure that he had of that Japanese culture put upon him.
And there's a road that you feel like, yeah, he's definitely going down, because it's going to be like, that's going to be the redemption arc. But then they give you a little bit of a twist at the end where it's just when you think you know what the moral of the story is, we're going to dig it a little bit deeper and make this even a better story than you were expecting. And again, I went in there going, oh, giant monster fun. And I came out with so much more than that. Yeah. This could easily be one of the best films I've seen this year. It's definitely one of them. Between that and Oppenheimer, I'm not sure which one I would put on that pedestal. But yeah, Godzilla was better than it has any right at all to be. It's amazing.
Spoilers, they set up for sequels.
Yeah.
And not just giant monster sequel. We may have something Andromeda strain-ish going on with this. And I don't know that a Godzilla movie has gone through that yet. So that's going to be really neat. It's so subtle when it happens. You see this character that you thought was dead, and now they're back, and there's something growing on them.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what we shall get.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be interesting. We're getting toward the end of the year. We're just a handful of weeks away from 2024. We're now starting to dip our toes into the abyss because the strike was on for so long. And it's like Marvel has one movie that's coming out next year, just one. And hopefully it hasn't been spoiled to absolute destruction. But we get a couple more episodes of Doctor Who to end up the year. And we've gotten this wonderful Godzilla movie. At this point, we're prepping for 2024. There's no telling what we're going to see come next year.
But we shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 206. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.